During Sora's time in the final world, he encounters an unnamed star. The conversation they have raises a lot of questions, like who is she? How did she end up here? Who did this to her? And who were the people or person that she talks about in the conversation? What if the identity of the Star Girl is not someone from the age of fairy tales? Not someone that we know in the present day time, but a person that was subtly placed that didn't raise any suspicion for this mystery. In this video, I will be talking and theorizing if the girl from the Verum Rex trailer is the Star Girl. This is the Verum Star Theory. I think the best place to start is to look at all other possibilities that other people jump to for the star's identity, which luckily isn't that many characters. One character that I am going to leave out is Skuld, as I feel that the information from the Kingdom Hearts 3 secret reports heavily push for Skuld to be Subject X, as well that I feel is that Subject X and the star are two different characters. I'll start with Ava, as I feel there really isn't much that points to her with the star identity. I bring her up because I've seen talks here and there from people trying to draw connections and conclusions. With that in mind, I've tried to see how the two could be connected, but nothing really goes together. The star's dialogue, the way she speaks, it just doesn't seem to connect really at all. The only info that we're given about Ava right now is the lines that Luciu gives during the epilogue in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Guess Ava didn't make it after all.
Meaning what?
I told her clear as day what it is I had to do.
And is that why you decided to exclude her?
As if Ava had her own mission, and she carried it out.
But even with that, there still just isn't that much to go off of. So what did happen to Ava? Well, that's a story for another time. Now for Lysias' case, I can understand why people come to this answer, but the details for this outcome seem shaky in ways that don't add up as nicely as it should be in my eyes. So the idea is that after Lysias' death, she ends up in the final world, and the person that she refers to in the conversation is her brother Lysias, aka Marluxia. One problem that I have with this is during Lysias' death, we can see her heart float up to Kingdom Hearts, which we can assume. If we go by this one line from Chirithy,
"The natural end for those whose hearts and bodies perish together,"
then Lysias' death in Union Cross doesn't align one-to-one with the info presented by Chirithy in Kingdom Hearts 3. Another point that I will be bringing up later in this video is Sora's reaction hearing the name the star gives him. It doesn't really match up with this angle. All in all, I can see why people would believe that Lysias is the star, but to me it just seems a little too easy to jump to, or it's because some of the information used for this connection seems to have some issues in some degrees that hurt it when dissecting them further. But now let's look into the possibility of the Verum Rex girl being the unnamed star. So I want everyone to bear with me for this. To explain this theory, there's a lot of info to talk about, and using a past game Nomura worked on called Final Fantasy Versus 13, which became Final Fantasy 15 that Verum Rex is influenced by. Each part I'll try my best to explain concepts and plausible rumors that makes this idea interesting. And I do say really bear with me on the rumors part. But let's start with the first point, which also rounds out a bit more with part 1, and that is the star's voice. So this may be a weird thing to bring up, but there is a reason for it. Have you ever had that moment where you see a character and imagine how they would sound, or vice versa? That's what happened when I was creating this theory. Let's play some dialogue from the star, and I'll show you what I mean.
I cannot be certain. He's been changed beyond recognition. His heart replaced with another's. He must see to the tasks before you first. Here you are on the brink, and yet you hold on to who you are. You possess a strong sense of purpose, and in that purpose you will find direction.
Now let's play this audio, but add an image of the Verum Rex girl.
I cannot be certain. He's been changed beyond recognition. His heart replaced with another's. He must see to the tasks before you first. Here you are on the brink, and yet you hold on to who you are. You possess a strong sense of purpose, and in that purpose you will find direction.
For me, when I put these two things together, it feels like a match. As we don't really know how this girl sounds or how she speaks, it's easy to imagine these lines would fall into place to her, unlike a character we have seen before, voiced or not. Now the dialogue for these lines could work for another character like Lysias, but like before, some of it feels just off or just feels disjointed in ways. The star goes on saying that she pines for another, which means to be very sad because you want to be with someone who you love or want something that you do not have. I honestly like the angle of this being the case for the Verum Rex girl, and the one she's pining for is Yasora, playing on the relationship of Noctis and Luna/Stella from verse 13, fitting the Romeo and Juliet role for them being from different nations. Since Verum Rex pulls some stuff from verses, Yasora will more than likely take up a lot of things from Noctis and the original ideas of the story. Verses 13, from what we can gather, was centered around death, the kingdom of the dead, ghosts, and most notably from the trailers, Noctis sleeping. In a lot of the trailers, Noctis would often be shown sleeping, and it was supposed to be a big part of the original story. From speculation and rumors, Noctis would create realities in his dreams. Some rumors would go on to talk about that Noctis would actually talk to Stella through his dreams, but sadly nothing came up about Noctis' sleeping habits in the game. Pretty much if it was a plot point, it fizzled out by 15's inception. Noctis would be granted powers through his near-death experience seeing the kingdom of the dead and came back instead of crossing over. The same would be said for Stella as well, and the both of them would see a light in the sky, which is where the saying, "eyes that see the light of expiring souls" comes from. An idea that I really liked and found plausible, like others, is that Stella would have been killed by Noctis during the early stage of verses 13, and Noctis wouldn't have remembered it. With looking at these concepts of death and sleep/dreams, it would flow really well into what happens in Kingdom Hearts 3.
The edges of sleep and death touch, and one can't help the occasional crossover.
So I choose to wait here, where he can find me.
Yasora could have easily have been possessed. By who, you may ask? Well, we did see a certain someone in Verum Rex during the secret movie. As well, it would play into the idea of Verum Rex's tagline on the back of the box cover in Toy Box, which is "Reclaim Your Heart," a play on words to Final Fantasy XV's tagline, "Reclaim Your Throne." Could have killed the Verum Rex girl, and now she waits for him in the final world where he could reach her through his sleep and dreams. Connecting back to Sora's conversation with the star, Sora's reaction to the name she gives him actually would make complete sense. That if she said Yasora, Sora would be confused by that because Sora would only think that Yasora is nothing more than a video game character and not real. Same going for the player, only to come to find out in the secret movie Ysora is real and Verum Rex is an actual real place. If it was someone like Marluxia, which she would have had to have said Marluxia and not Laurium, because Sora doesn't know Marluxia's somebody name. Also, I feel Sora would have mentioned it to him during the final battle, but yet Sora hasn't done anything with the information. Lastly, to have connect to Ysora is that if it was someone else, especially Marluxia, Sora's reaction would have been way more shocking of a reaction like this, instead of it being a more confused reaction, which at this point, we should all know the difference. There were a couple of cool details that are very symbolic to fit in line for this direction, but also would make some sense. If you really think about it, the whole conversation between Sora and the star could be taken as symbolic, if the star is the Verum Rex girl. Sora in Japanese means sky, put those things together, a star in the sky. Ysora in Japanese means night sky, a star in the night sky. Throughout verses 13 and 15's development, Stella and Luna wore jewelry that would fit their names. Stella would rock star earrings, which would be more apparent in 2013's footage, but over time as Stella started to become Luna, her earrings would turn into a moon necklace that reflected Luna instead. Strangely enough, the star earrings would still be used in Kingsglaive Final Fantasy XV and in a poster ad later in the game as an update. Noctis was said to be the opposite to Sora by Nomura in this interview. Do you know the name Sora means the sky in Japanese, and Noctis, his family name, is Kylum, which means sky as well? So basically, Noctis means night sky, so they are kind of opposites of each other. There is a reason why I named these characters as opposites. Looking back at Final Fantasy XV, to me Noctis kinda doesn't fit that description anymore. It would actually be really cool to set up interactions between Sora and Ysora with this in mind. One final detail I would like to add is actually about fate. This idea actually came to mind when listening to the Night Sky Prince talk about episode Arden for Final Fantasy XV. The idea was that the 13 trilogy centered around defying fate, going against the gods, and the center for verses, as the name suggests, would be to accept fate. And what does Sora say at the beginning when you boot up the game before the opening, and is confirmed by Nomura that it reflects Sora's mental state at the end of the game?
They can take your world, they can take your heart, cut you loose from all you know. But if it's your fate, then every step forward will always be a step closer to home.